The Tomb, The Watchers, Book 1 by Carl Novakovich. Independently published, 2021. John Gideon, a former homicide detective turned PI, has dug too deep. Now he has to come to terms with the truth of the world while searching for the only family he has left. Together with his new partner Beth May, a spell-wielding demon who has turned her back on hell, the two are humanity's last hope to stop a collective of fallen angels, known as the Watchers, from breaking the first of the 7 seals of Revelation. If the seals are broken, they will set free sickness, war, and death on the world until there is nothing left but an apocalyptic wasteland. John and Beth have the tools needed and the strength to stop them, but are they already too late? I'm the kind of guy that reads in spurts rather than long sittings, such is life. But this book made that hard to do. It opens up into such a fast pace that I found it difficult to find a good stopping point. The entire book is fast paced with little time for the reader to stop and catch their breath. The description itself tells us that John has dug too deep, although it's mostly by accident. He mostly just falls headfirst into having to stop a group of demons from freeing the imprisoned 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Pretty straightforward plot, but it does have some interesting commentary on the state of the world today. John teams up with former witch, now demon, Beth, in order to prevent the demons and Watchers from unlocking a tomb that imprisons the 4 horsemen and the Antichrist. The tomb has been leaking negative energy that has been causing humanity to become more and more evil. Now, with that description, where do you think the tomb is located? Well, duh, Chicago, of course. Now, don't come at me, Chi-Town. The author put it there, not me. As far as I can recall, this is the first book that I've ever read that was in first person but switches point of views from different chapters. That was not an issue for me, but it was different enough to make me take notice. There are also chapters written in third person for a more narrative standpoint for scenes when our 2 main characters are not present. I do know that change between first person and third person was a first for me. It works for this story, it just caught me a little off guard the first time it happened. Maybe the entire story should have been written in third person instead? I don't know. It's not a biggie for me, I'm just thinking out loud at this point. I have seen an interview with the author where he mentions wanting to write scripts for movies and television shows, so I can understand his influence here in writing different point of views along with separate narrations. The flow of the story does have more of a script feel to it. I'll post a link to that interview in the description for anyone interested in learning more about the author in this book from his point of view. Another thing I found different and interesting in this book is when the narrating characters break the 4th wall and address the readers directly. That was a fun little thing to keep things interesting. Another style I don't ever recall encountering in books before, at least not in my preferred genre reads. The book is written in present tense as well. That has always been a strange encounter for me, but with this particular story, it started working in my opinion, especially in chapter 13. Beth is speaking on demonic and fallen angel influences on the world, and her descriptions of scenarios matches a lot with the current state of the world, so reading it in present tense made me reflect on recent news events and such. That scene is written with a little bias leaning in one political direction, but it was still undeniable to make those connections. You get the sense that Beth is speaking about the reader's current time frame, and it was eerily impacting. There's nothing much like a witch demon telling you how bad a shape humanity is in to put things in perspective, I guess. Our main characters are John Gideon and Beth May. John is a well-rounded and pretty believable character. We get to see a pretty balanced change to the character as he goes from highs to lows to highs again. John's reaction to the supernatural as things unfold in the heat of the moment seems pretty spot on to me. He may have been a little easy to jump right into things, but I feel like his background as a police officer covers that good enough. He does have his own motives to propel him, so it's not like he's just the all-American good guy. Plus, his infatuation with Beth would make any love-struck dummy follow along like a puppy dog anyway, right? He loses the battle of she's a demon, but she's hot too debate in his mind pretty quick. Beth was a really intriguing character, but I don't feel like she was presented as strongly as John was. Beth has ample room for backstory, which was briefly touched on, but there's plenty that could be expanded on. Hopefully we get to see more of her origins explained in the upcoming sequels. See, I'm already losing the she's a demon but she's hot too argument as well. I was really excited going into this story because I love anything dealing with the Book of Enoch. There was one flashback scene early on to the pre-flood world and it was done really well, but that was the only one. I would have loved to see more of that interwoven throughout the book. I understand that this is an introduction to a series, so I know some of the character development and backstories have yet to be revealed. All in all, the only con I have to this story is the lack of development on Beth. I won't let that affect my ratings though, in hopes that Beth is more developed in later installments. The story was gripping enough for me to come back for more for this series. But that does bring me to some questions that this book left me with. Beth was not born a demon. She was a practicing witch that was tricked into performing dark arts, therefore condemning her soul after death. It never explains, but I just assume that that's how she became a demon. So, demons have the free will to change their mind and work against the plans of hell? Stephen is another character that did this, but he's caught and sent back to hell for something the book calls reconditioning, and this just makes him evil again. The reconditioning thing is never fully explained. In my mind, I just went at it from a brainwashing conversion therapy kind of deal. So, we have a demon that switched to the side of good, then after reconditioning can't make that switch again? I will admit, I'm not 100% sure if that was a hole in the story or if I'm just looking at this from a biblical perspective too heavily. In the interview mentioned earlier, the author does state that he is not a religious person, so I will take that into consideration. Some of the scenarios of this story are a little deep for a non-religious perspective. I'm not holding the author too accountable here though. Research and revelation in the end of the world in a religious aspect is not something you figure out after a few days of research, and mixing the Book of Enoch and the Watchers into the mix is sure to just complicate your research even further. I know people that have researched Revelation and the Book of Enoch for decades, myself included, and today they are no closer to understanding anything than they were at day one. For a non-religious writer to try and tackle those concepts, you earn my respect, even if I don't agree with some of your interpretations. The Tomb is a fictional story, after all. Looking at this book solely from a fictional story aspect, I enjoyed it. I'm not 100% sold on the ending though, but I do understand that this is the introduction to a series, so I won't knock it too bad. Part 2 has already been released, and The Tomb was intriguing enough for me that I'd gladly check out Part 2 to see if any of my lingering questions get answered. Once I check out the rest of the series, you'll find out more about it here. Until then, find yourself a good book and enjoy a break from reality.